Hey guys, today we're going to go over the list I put together for doing my own maintenance. It's a list that I compiled from what I could find for logs from the BMW sites themselves, and I also added information that I could find from blogs of issues and problems that have come up with the various owners to try to make it more complete. I've also added part numbers and suppliers sources. However, I just want to mention that although I tried to be as accurate as possible, I would definitely verify yourself as to the part numbers before you order any parts or any of the settings used to make sure it's compatible. So please use this as a guideline, but use your own judgment and research to make sure it is accurate. So that being said, let's go over what I've got put together here. The first section is the standard operation check that BMW would do if you brought a car in for inspection. So it includes verifying and checking the control error messages. You can do that yourself with Bimberlink or ISTA if you have the software to do that, but that tends to be more expensive. What to do if you do have some error messages is outside the scope of this video, but you can at least check if you do have some error codes and then determine from that point what to do with those error codes. Checking the indicator lights is next. Then they check and reset the CBS or the condition-based service displays. Checking the tire pressures, make sure that they're correct. You will have to check on your own vehicle what is the correct tire pressure. The older versions of the car, or older models, use 33 psi in the front and 41 in the back, but I've heard that the more recent versions of the i3s go all the way up to 39 and 44 psi for their set point. Check the parking brake for functionality, actually just making sure that the parking brake actually does hold the car. That's pretty straightforward to check that. Checking the brake thickness of the pads. I have some videos out on how to do it using your iPhone camera, or you can use a gauge, and it should be, general recommendation is greater than 4 millimeters on the pads before you consider to replace it. Checking your high voltage battery, they would go and check the battery kappa and record the mileage and battery temperatures. You can use the hidden menu to do that. Again, checking the tires again, making sure that there's no damage or any other issues. Also making sure that the tire and wheel sizes are in the correct location. Several owners have noted that the tires were not actually tires and wheels were not in the right positions in the front and back, since they are different. Something to check. Checking your tire tread wear. You should be greater than about 1.6 millimeters thickness on your tires. If not, you need to consider replacing them. If you have a Rex, you might want to be making sure to consume the fuel and add a fuel stabilizer on a 6-month basis. Checking your washer fluid. This I added also because some people complained about this. Checking the oil, checking or oil the wood dashboard if you have one with different materials. I was using a natural furniture wood wax, but you can use whatever you find is useful for you. And also a condition, if you have leather seats, you may want to be putting some leather care on it. I have noticed myself that the leather tends to dry out fairly easily. I'm not sure if that's because of the tanning by the olive oil tanning that was used on it or something else. So that is the 6-month or 8,000 mile checklist. Also, the CBS requires every 2 years or 30,000 miles to replace the microfilters. So the cost is about $18 if you do it yourself. It's way more if you happen to take it into the dealer. Not too difficult. There's several videos out on how to do that yourself. does take a little bit of effort, but it's not too difficult. Checking your 12-volt battery. A lot of people have had problems with the 12-volt batteries failing, so you may want to keep a close eye on that. 5 years to 75,000 miles. It's kind of routine. However, you definitely want to check it and make sure that your voltage and cold cranking amps are adequate. I've been using a battery checking gauge to keep track of it. Check that the state of charge of the battery is over 75%, making sure it's being charged. So it doesn't take too long to do that. Other things for CBS service that is checked on a 2-year basis is changing the engine oil. An oil filter comes up, and again, there's many videos out on how to DIY the engine oil change and filter change. And here are the numbers of the components being used, and or alternatives as well if you're not able to find them. I recently did the oil change using the ECS tuning kit. However, I wanted to mention that the kit that was ordered did not include the crush washer, so if you don't have access to one, you may want to make sure to order one of those in advance. Going down to the annual vehicle check based on the BMW checklist. Checking the horn, headlight flasher, and hazard light flashers. Checking instrument control lighting and heater air conditioning blowers. Checking the lighting systems, turn signals backup, license plate interior, map lights, glove box, etc. Checking that the seat belts are functioning correctly. Check windshield wiper and washer jet positions, replace wiper blades. The mobility tire repair kit, make sure that the sealant container is not expired, replace if it is. Front tire, checking the tread depth again, back tire tread depth. Checking the wheel bolt torque settings. The best I could find was it should be at 140 Newton meters or 103 pound torque settings. Reset the tire pressure monitor. Apparently that can drift over time, so it needs to be reset. Checking the power steering for proper function, make sure it's actually working correctly. Visually inspects the airbags for any damage, torn, sticker missing. Check your rearview mirrors, make sure everything is working properly, functioning properly. Retorque bolts on the door stop mechanism at each front and rear door pillar, because it apparently can get loose over time. Lubricate B-pillar top and bottom latch mechanisms for smooth motion. The B-pillar is the one that's attached to the rear carriage doors. There's been reports that moisture or road salts and whatnot can cause them to get sticky, so they need to be lubricated on a routine basis. Lubricating the locking pin mechanism for the charge connection doors. I've been using a Q-tip to make sure that it doesn't bind up and cause the motor or gears to strip in the charge connection door. Lubricate locking door mechanisms, especially the charge and the Rex petrol door both, with some lubricant spray. Windshield washer and intensive cleaning systems. Check the operation fluid, top up if necessary. Also, check for leaks. There's been some reports of leaks developing. Checking the brake fluid level. Top it off. It's under the front hood. Check the wheel cylinders for any leakage. If you have oil stains on the wheels, that's an obvious sign that there may be a brake fluid leak going on. Check the coolant level and antifreeze concentration in the drive circuits. Again, this is under the hood. Check the coolant and antifreeze concentration for the interior heating circuit. Again, that's under the hood. Checking the oil level under the back access trunk in the back of the car for the range extender. Check the cleanliness of the oil. Again, just put some on your fingers and look to see how dirty it is. Obviously, if it's very dirty, you may want to consider changing it at a faster cycle than would otherwise be recommended. Checking the coolant and antifreeze concentration under the back hood for the Rex unit. Clean dust and oil from the area and the back of the engine bay where the Rex and electric motor units are. Again, make sure that the high voltage is turned off before you do it, but you can get a lot of oil and dirt buildup in that area. Brake system connections and lines, check for leaks. Check for correct positioning. There were some comments of rattles related to lines that are moving around under the car. Underbody, just a visual inspection of all the transmission, rear axles. Look for any damages, leaks, or corrosion that might be occurring. Check for the occasional charging cable for damage, cuts, breakage, deformation, corrosion, or wear. Going on down here, steering components, check for clearance, leaks, damage, and wear. Check for engine motor mount bracket for signs of damage or loose connections, tears in the rubber, or fluid leakage. So there's been several issues reported with motor mounts leaking, or if you have the older models, the plastic mounts can also get cracked, so something that needs to be routinely checked. Check the top mount coil spring for bearing play. There's been concern with corrosion on those top bearings and causing some incorrect motion in the top of the coil spring mounts. Final inspection and road check of the cars. Check brakes for any unusual noises, steering for any unusual behaviors, shock absorbers, check for visual boot tears, which is pretty common. Spray rubber protectant on steering boots, shock boots, rubber suspension bushings, all of the rubber components that are underneath the car to extend the life. Although I want to mention that what to put on them is somewhat questionable. Some silicone sprays, which have been recommended by some owners, have petroleum-based solvents that actually is not compatible with EPDM rubber that is used. Check drive shaft U-joints for any oil leakage or cracks. Spray with rubber protectant just to prolong the life of the rubber joint boots as long as possible. If you see any oil on the boots around the area, that's a good indication that probably there's a crack in one of those U-joint boots on the shafts. Brake fluid, recommend checking it, if you're not changing it, checking it for the resistance. You can do that with a fairly inexpensive handheld meter. If it's less than 4% water, the general recommendation is it's probably okay at that point. Spark plugs are recommended to be replaced every 30,000 miles roughly. I would recommend, depending on how much you use the Rex, to get a phone app and check how much mileage is actually on the Rex before recommending to do any spark plug changes. Maintenance work recommended by BMW at default every 2 years, although I would extend this based on the low mileage and usage. Replacing the brake fluid every 4 years to 60,000 miles. Again, BMW says every 2 years, but I'm not seeing the degradation in the brake fluid that would justify that, at least not where I'm located. Check the front wheel bearings for any play. Wheel hub protective caps must be replaced and glued back into the wheel during this relubrication of those bearings. Again, it may depend on where you're located and how much moisture and wear those bearings get, but there has been several reports of them getting loose, so it's something to be keeping an eye on. Recharge air conditioner circuit. Again, there's no official check that I could find. Some people say that it's a sealed system and should not be necessary to check or top it off at all. So I'll leave that up to your discretion, but something to at least be thinking about and probably monitoring the performance of it, especially since it is necessary for the battery cooling as well. Maintenance services that require longer term service, front brakes and rear brakes. Recommended is 4 years or 60,000 miles on the front brakes and about 6 years and 90,000 miles on the rear brakes. Based on the wear and tear that I've had on these components, it looks like it might actually go longer than that, but it's something to keep an eye on. Again, the part numbers and costs are listed here as well, so if you need to refer to it, you can stop the video and get these numbers. Wear sensors and brake pads might need to be replaced if you replace the brake pads. It's something to think about as well for the parts. And again, just verify that the parking brake is actually functional and has no issues with regards to its functionality. So that is the full list that I've been using to do my routine maintenance checks with, and I wanted to share that with you. I logged down my information such as error codes and whatnot on my spreadsheet to keep track of it, and it seems to be working okay so far. You're free to take a look at this and use it, and hopefully it will help you out. Thanks.